For years, Samsung has operated without a serious challenger in the book-style foldable market. That isolation allowed for a highly predictable strategy: release a single premium device, refine the hinge, upgrade the processor, and ship it again the following year. But that iterative approach left a persistent design flaw largely unaddressed. To accommodate a folded screen without creating a bulky square, Samsung maintained a tall, cramped cover display on the outside of the device. This overlay shows exactly where that design fails the user. When a standard smartphone aspect ratio is placed on top of the Galaxy Z Fold 7, the horizontal deficit becomes obvious. The narrow space physically restricts the keyboard layout, hindering two-thumb typing and forcing third-party applications to render in awkward, stretched formats. By treating each year as a safe, marginal update, Samsung allowed its flagship hardware to remain compromised for everyday tasks. Users were paying a premium for a foldable that was frustrating to use when closed. That complacency is now a liability. Industry intelligence points directly to Apple entering the foldable segment in late 2026, launching a device heavily rumored as the iPhone Fold or iPhone Ultra. Apple's reported design philosophy targets Samsung's specific weakness. Leaks suggest the incoming iPhone favors a wider, passport-style chassis with a 4:3 aspect ratio, abandoning the narrow cover screen concept entirely. To defend its market share, Samsung is abandoning its single flagship strategy. Instead of releasing one foldable, they're splitting the Galaxy Z Fold 8 lineup into a dual-tier product architecture. This defensive maneuver relies on an aggressive timeline. Samsung is accelerating the launch of a brand new device, the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide, scheduling it for a major Galaxy Unpack event in London on July 22, 2026. This puts their device on shelves a full 2 months before Apple's typical September window. The strategy relies on clear segmentation. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra acts as a direct continuation of the older, tall design, packed with maximum specifications. Meanwhile, the new Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide introduces a radically shorter, passport-shaped form factor. By establishing this second tier early, Samsung ensures that when Apple finally reveals its own wide-format device, a mature, reviewed, and fully accessorized equivalent is already waiting in retail stores. The physical restructuring of the wide model completely overhauls the user interface. On the outside, it utilizes a 16:10 cover screen. This specific ratio matches the proportions of a standard slab smartphone, restoring a natural typing surface. On the inside, the flexible display opens to 7.6 inches with a 4:3 landscape ratio. This geometry mimics a compact tablet, removing the need to rotate the device for split-screen multitasking and drastically reducing the letterboxing effect when playing widescreen media. Plotting these dimensions reveals the structural achievement. The chassis measures a short 123.9 millimeters in height, allowing it to rest completely inside a standard pocket. When unfolded, the 161.4 millimeter width is distributed across a frame that measures just 4.5 millimeters thick. Despite expanding the surface area, engineers successfully reduced the total mass. By utilizing lighter composite brackets and optimized cutouts, the device weighs approximately 200 grams, noticeably lighter than previous generations. Looking closely at a cross-section of the display reveals a 60-micrometer ultra-thin glass layer. This material is 30% thicker than previous iterations. Supported by a laser-drilled metal plate, this thicker laminate physically forces the center line flat, distributing the mechanical stress outward to significantly reduce the depth of the crease. Between the 16:10 cover screen, the 4.5 millimeter profile, and the thicker display glass, the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide directly resolves the ergonomic and structural complaints that defined Samsung's earlier hardware. However, releasing this architectural update in 2026 meant colliding with severe macroeconomic constraints, most notably a global memory supply shortage, colloquially known as Ramageddon. Inside semiconductor cleanrooms, the industry-wide shortage of DRAM has spiked component costs. Developing an entirely new folding chassis is already expensive. Combining that with inflated memory prices created a situation where Samsung's profit margins were under threat. To prevent the entry price of the new wide model from exceeding the Ultra tier, Samsung made a calculated economic compromise. They began stripping specific hardware components from the assembly line. The wide model omits a dedicated telephoto zoom lens, relying on a dual camera setup instead. System memory is capped at 12 gigabytes of RAM, and wired charging speeds are electronically limited to 25 watts. Most notably, Samsung completely removed the internal active digitizer. As a result, the wide model offers zero support for the S Pen stylus, restricting productivity input strictly to touch. The supply chain constraints forced a rigid division in the product line. Buyers seeking uncompromised photographic sensors and premium computing power are pushed away from the new Passport design and gated into the older, narrower Ultra form factor. This division results in a highly specific retail strategy. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide is projected to start at $1,899 in the US. The fully featured Ultra will carry a $200 premium, launching at $2,099. This pricing forces a strict ultimatum on the consumer. Buyers must choose to sacrifice optical zoom and stylus support to gain the superior Passport form factor, or sacrifice modern ergonomics to retain flagship hardware features. Internal production data indicates Samsung is betting heavily on the former. Manufacturing targets for the wide model have been boosted by hundreds of thousands of units, placing it on par with their standard foldables and establishing it as the company's primary growth engine for the year. But asking consumers to spend nearly $2,000 in premium markets like the US and Europe for a device that lacks flagship cameras and stylus support carries immense commercial risk. That risk compounds if Apple enters the market a few months later with a unified device. If the iPhone Fold pairs a wide Passport design with uncompromised processing and premium camera hardware, the distinction between Samsung's two models will be put to a severe test. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide proves that Samsung can engineer a foldable that looks and feels like a natural smartphone, but the calculated omissions designed to protect their margins represent a massive gamble, one that could push high-end consumers directly toward their biggest competitor.